And there is a long history to China's doublespeak on radical Islamist terror at the United Nations. China put a technical hold on sanctions or listing of that Maulana of terror Masood Azhar for a decade between 2009 and 19. It played the same game with Abdul Rahman Makki of Lashkar-e-Taiba and now with Rauf Azhar or Rauf Azhar. Why? Does China, aspiring to be this global superpower, does China need Pakistan terror's crutch to stall India's rise? I'm Gaurav Sawant. We discuss that. But first, as always, the headlines. Fight over freebies reaches the Supreme Court. The apex court calls for a debate on freebies during elections, says fiscal responsibility is necessary. Arvind Kejriwal slams the centre. Three key accused arrested in connection with the murder of BJP youth worker Praveen Nittaru. Police say a link to a radical Islamist organization, Popular Front of India, cannot be ruled out. Court remands Trinamool Congress strongman Anubrata Mandal to 10 days in CBI custody in a cattle smuggling case. Another Mamta aide arrested after former Minister Parth Chatterjee. Karnataka Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai rubbishes speculation of his ouster, mocks the Congress charges against him as laughable.
I don't want to give much importance to it. I have become Sthita Prajna. My presence of mind is very clear because this is all falsehood. Truth is that there is a stable government and it is going to be continue to stable.
Political showdown over Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Kala Jadoo taunt over Congress Party's Black Friday protest. Rahul Gandhi hits back, says the Prime Minister is spreading superstitious beliefs. Brazenly supporting Pakistan state-sponsored terror in India, China has blocked sanctions against Rauf Azhar, the brother of Jaish-e-Mohammad chief Maulana Masood Azhar, at the United Nations Security Council Sanctions Committee. China had earlier put a technical hold on sanctions against Abdul Rahman Makki, the second in command of Hafiz Saeed of Lashkar-e-Taiba. But these aren't just two instances. China is a serial offender, having blocked sanctions against the Maulana of terror Masood Azhar for a decade between 2009 and 19. For the second time in a month, China has blocked a UN proposal to blacklist a wanted terrorist. At the United Nations Security Council, China placed a technical hold on a joint US-India bid to list sanctions against Jaish-e-Mohammad's deputy chief and the brother of a UN-designated global terrorist, the Maulana of terror Masood Azhar. Abdul Rauf Azhar is not only a key member of this terrorist organization, Jaish-e-Mohammad, but is also responsible for the hijack of 1999 Indian Airlines flight from Kathmandu to Delhi, IC-814. Azhar has also been involved in the planning and execution of multiple terror attacks in India, from the 2001 Parliament attack to the 2016 Pathankot strike. India has hit out at Beijing, calling its move to shield a terrorist politically motivated.
It is most regrettable that genuine and evidence-based listing proposals pertaining to some of the most notorious terrorists in the world are being placed on hold. Double standards and continuing politicization have rendered the credibility of the sanctions regime at an all-time low.
This is not the first time that China has moved against the United Nations Security Council bid to list Jaish-e-Mohammad and Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists on the UN sanctions list.
China's double standards are very explicit. Not only that, they are not playing any positive role or even an objective role in dealing with terrorism, let alone fight against it. It is only when they get affected through ETIM or in Afghanistan or elsewhere, then they try to wake up and do something bilaterally.
China has defended its action, backing these terrorists.
严格的根据安理会126区委员会的规则和程序，以建设性负责任的态度参与126区委员会的工作。关于相关的列明申请，中方需要更多的时间来进行评估。我们希望有关的媒体不要捕风捉影、妄加揣测。
China's repeated efforts to protect Pakistan's state-sponsored terror exposed Beijing's double standards. While it cracks down what it terms is Islamist extremism in the Xinjiang province with an iron hand, on global fora, China unabashedly bats for Pakistan's state-sponsored terror. Bureau Report, India Today. And the question remains, why? Why would China want to repeatedly put a technical hold on sanctions against Pakistani terrorists again and again and again? And with multiple Pakistani terrorists after putting 1 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps for re-education. Why such blatant double standards? Joining me on India First is Andrew K.P. Leung. He joins us from Hong Kong. He is a Chinese well-known strategist and analyst. Sushant Sareen is Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, joins us on the broadcast. But Andrew Leung, if I may, what would China's motive be to repeatedly block sanctions against terrorists who belong to UN-designated terrorist organizations? Take Maulana Rauf Azhar, for example, the chief of operations of a UN-designated banned terrorist organization, Jaish-e-Mohammad.
Well, you're talking about the actions by countries in the United Nations. Now, all countries act in their best national interest. I mean, they're not there to promote a kind of ideology or ethics or whatever. I mean, all countries, India included, United States included, behave in the same way in the United Nations because they act in their best national interest. Now, you talk about the UN sanctions against certain, we think, terrorist groups. In 2019, China did not, block sanctions at the time because China-India relations were much, much better. And of course, China's relations with Pakistan has always been very robust. But at the moment, I think that Indian-China relations are not in the best of times. And of course, China-Pakistan relations remain strong as ever.
So basically what you're saying is terror does not matter, lives lost does not matter, China only looks at its selfish self-interest.
Well,
you're saying that in as many words, human lives don't matter to China. Sushant Sareen, it can't just be a lollipop. It can't just be a lollipop for Pakistan. Maximum number of terrorists and terror entities on this 1267 sanctions list are in and from Pakistan. What's China's motive in the case of Rauf Azhar? Let's for a moment stay on this individual. We'll take up other names subsequently.
Gaurav, I think one thing needs to be made very clear from what the Chinese guest on your program is saying, that he admits quite clearly that China's best interests are served by promoting terrorists and protecting terrorists and providing diplomatic cover fire to terror-sponsoring countries. Now, he has said it in as many words, although I've just paraphrased what he has just said. That is what serves China's national interest, which tells you that China is basically a terror-sponsoring and terror-supporting country. Now, what is their interest which is served? Anything which destabilizes India, all the murder and mayhem that these terrorists carry out in India serves China's interests. And this is not the first time the Chinese have done it. They have done it right after the Mumbai attacks in 2008. For the longest, for about at least 3 or 4 years, yes, they continued to put a technical hold on Hafiz Saeed. Finally, they were forced into proscribing him. then they did it on Masood Azhar.
Yes.
And it was only when, the Chinese nose was rubbed in the dust and they were shamefaced, left shamefaced, they were isolated, they were going to be outvoted, and a vote was called, that the Chinese balked and agreed to, proscribe Masood Azhar.
That's
they
the
have
truth.
followed that same
Andrew
template both with
Leung,
Abdul Rahman Makki
I'll come
as
to
well
others
as
in just a
Rauf
moment.
Azhar.
I want to, let's take this step by step. On in India today, we actually want to expose China. We want to expose China's doublespeak on terror. You'll put 1 million Muslims in jail, in concentration camps. Andrew Leung, Xi Jinping does not care about human lives lost. In 26/11, for example, 166 people from a dozen countries were killed. But to Xi Jinping, it does not matter. He will blatantly support Pakistani terror if it serves his purpose. Wow. So how different is China from Pakistan? Directly a state sponsor of terror.
I disagree with your statements, sir, if I may say so. These accusations that about what China was doing in Xinjiang, this is totally a kind of misrepresentation. In fact, the United Nations chief representative was recently invited to visit Xinjiang. And in fact, a lot of the stuff happening in Xinjiang is to enable the improving the livelihood of a lot of Xinjiang people.
Oh, absolutely. Put 1 million men in jail and put Han Chinese men with their wives. And don't let that report come out.
Can I be allowed to finish, please? What I'm saying is that all countries act in the best interest, as in the case of Kashmir, for example. What's happening in Kashmir as far as India is concerned. And a lot of countries do not agree.
Kashmir is India. China is illegally occupying a part of Kashmir, as is your vassal state, as is China's vassal state, Pakistan. But let me once again bring in Sushant Sareen. Sushant Sareen, James Bond, Ian Fleming's lines from Goldfinger: once it's coincidence, second it's happenstance, third 3 times it's enemy action. And China has done it more than 4 times. Clearly, India needs to accept this is enemy action and treat China as such.
I couldn't agree with you more, Gaurav, on that. I think the Chinese have left no stone unturned to express their open hostility and enmity towards India. I think it has been a great weakness on the part of India that we continue to harbor these, fond beliefs that maybe we can actually have better relations with China. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there is something deeply wrong in the Chinese mindset, in the Chinese psyche. I don't know whether it's inferiority complex or whatever else you want to call it, but they, they don't even behave like a great power. They are petty, they are churlish, they bully people when they can do it. It's only when their own nose is going to be rubbed in the dust that they suddenly start, behaving in a normal manner. Yes. So frankly speaking, I think there has been a kind of a misreading of China on India's part. And at each stage, Gaurav, you tell me one thing on which the Chinese have behaved in a friendly manner with India. You talk about NSG, you talk about terrorism, you talk about trade, you look at the kind of restrictions the Chinese put on trade with India. And I think we really need to start moving forward on these particular issues. We really need to start decoupling ourselves from China.
Yes. Because
this nonsense has gone on for forever now.
Seriously?
And for anybody to imagine in India that, the more we engage with the Chinese, the more the Chinese will become amenable. The Americans have tried that. They've enriched China, they've given them technology, they've let them steal technology from America.
Yes.
And look, the wages of that policy. So I think
Andrew Leung,
we need to wake up and smell the coffee.
Andrew Leung, isn't China ashamed of openly backing terrorists involved in major terror attacks, be it IC-814 hijack in 1999, to the Parliament attack in 2001, to 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks in 2008? Why would China back terrorists so openly?
Well, China has not backed terrorists. And indeed, what is regarded as terrorists by some countries are fighting for their own interests, or either national interests or ethnic interests or whatever interests. I think that what China is doing is opening in the United Nations, saying China needs more time to look into this, as what China was saying before. And then what I was saying is this is not a 100% kind of the same kind of treatment all along. It depends really at the time of the relations between China and India. And I was saying in 2019, China didn't block the UN sanctions against some terrorists. At the time, relations between India
How
and
would China
were
react
much better.
if other countries were to do it with East Turkestan Islamic movement? If China wanted sanctions against them and others would block them, how would China react? Why such blatant double standards? A superpower like China needs the crutch of Pakistani terrorists to take on India. I mean, shouldn't China be ashamed of itself?
Well, I think talking about double standards, and there is no price guessing which country is commonly known for double standards. That's the United States. And then, of course, as far as India is concerned, India does adopt different standards in different issues, depending on its own national interests. As I was saying that, for example, in Kashmir, for example, it's abrogating the autonomy of the Kashmir region. A lot of people were objecting to this.
But that's okay. We're a democracy. It was an act of Parliament of India. A democracy that Chinese know nothing about. You live in Hong Kong and you're seeing how Chinese jackboots are riding roughshod on democracy in Hong Kong.
Well, in Hong Kong,
so
I'm in Hong Kong now. This is the greatest misunderstanding.
Is it?
Misrepresentation. Well, look.
So if it's Taiwan, it's misrepresentation. If it's East Turkestan, East Turkestan, it's misrepresentation. I mean, what blatant double standards can these be, Andrew K.P. Leung?
Yeah, you as well. Just speak by yourself and not interview me. All right. I must allow the opportunity to say what's actually the situation in Hong Kong. I mean, for example, the Hong Kong is governed under the first of all, the joint declaration with Britain, and then the basic law, which is China's Beijing's law. Now, under the basic law...
And sir, you tore that agreement with the Brits. China tore that agreement in such blatant disregard. But that's not the topic of my debate today. One country, two systems, clearly not happening with Chinese jackboots in Hong Kong. But Sushant Sareen, what does China achieve through these stalling tactics? Is it now clear that China, that aspires to be this great superpower, needs Pakistan's crutches, Pakistan terror's crutches, to stall India's growth?
Well,
yeah, but Gaurav, that has exactly been the Chinese strategy. Look, its two best friends are two rogue countries. One is North Korea, which threatens a nuclear holocaust on the world, and the other is the Pakistanis, who threaten, Islamic radicalism, and their only thing which they can sell to the world is that, the terrorists will take over our nuclear bombs. So these are the two countries which are China's best friends. Which other country will call China a friend? Maybe the Russians right now, but the Russians, are in a bad spot right now. But other than that, which other country even trusts China anymore? Do you think any other country trusts China? So I think this is what the Chinese strategy is, that you have these rogue countries which make a nuisance of themselves in the rest of the world. The Chinese give them diplomatic cover fire, and the Chinese think they're being very smart doing this kind of a thing, where, every country which plays with these kind of games with other countries ultimately ends up paying a big price for it. We've seen that in the case of Pakistan. They sponsored all these groups, and many of these groups are coming back to bite Pakistan, which is very good for them. I have no sympathy for the Pakistanis. The same is going to happen to the Chinese. It's just a matter of time. So
East Turkestan freedom fighters,
they're most welcome.
And Andrew, East Turkestan, freedom fighters would actually may end up giving China grief, and only then perhaps Xi Jinping will understand. But I want to understand this, sir. Is this China's desperation to keep Pakistan's military jihad complex happy, since more than $60 billion have been sunk into Chinese President Xi Jinping's perhaps stillborn project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor?
Well, I don't think that China is particularly fixated in any particular issue in isolation. This must be looked at in the broader context of bilateral relations with, for example, between China and India, bilateral relations between China and Pakistan, and also the whole the region as a whole. And I think that China has been very, very consistent in guarding its own national interests as any other country. So as far as terrorist groups are concerned, as I said in 2019, China went along with it. But at the moment, I don't know what are the latest activities. What China is saying that it needs more time to look into this.
Oh, that is because in 2019 China was exposed out of 15 countries
against China.
Andrew, and I hope this out of 15 countries, 14 wanted sanctions against that Maulana of terror, Masood Azhar. And because a vote was called, China knew it stood exposed and isolated, that China's buckled under pressure. Perhaps that's the only language that China understands. You need to isolate it, you need to push China to a corner to get it to act in a civilized manner.